The sentence tells us that the military is determined, and we already knew that. In so many respects, this sentence, the conviction and sentence, are not surprising at all. We know the military is bloody-minded, and we know that the courts do their bidding, that they're really kangaroo courts. There's no justice, there's no rule of law, and these sentences, the beginning, are entirely predictable. But they're only the beginning. Aung San Suu Kyi has far more serious charges ahead of her. There'll be more similar kangaroo trials and further years added to the sentence that is delivered by the courts.
She's 76 years old. Some say she is not well at all, having been in detention. And also that this regime want her to in fact die in prison. Is that a possibility, that this is going to be a sentence that is going to have to be served by this former leader?
I think the military certainly wants to give that message, but what happens can be entirely different. Their own rule at the moment is very tenuous. The opposition, after almost 11 months, is still very strong. There are daily protests in the streets. The economy is continuing to crash. The amount of resistance the military is encountering is far beyond their expectations. So I've got no doubt that at this stage they want to see Aung San Suu Kyi in prison for life. But whether they can sustain that, either because of the opposition or because of changes within the military itself, that's impossible to say at this stage. And
when you're talking of this opposition, Chris, what are your reports of this? Is it creating enough chaos that the regime are finding it difficult to crack down on?
It certainly is. There are daily demonstrations, and we saw in the latest demonstration in Yangon an extraordinary new level of violence from the military, driving a military vehicle into the crowd, killing more than 5 people. But these demonstrations are continuing on a daily basis. As I said, the economy is in total collapse. The military is incapable of delivering basic government services, such as education and healthcare. These services are being delivered by the opposition through the civil disobedience movement. The biggest story in Myanmar is not the trial and conviction of Aung San Suu Kyi today, which is entirely predictable. The biggest story is the surprising persistence and strength of the opposition, which gets stronger and stronger and more effective with each day.
How can ASEAN protest what is happening to Aung San Suu Kyi and others, of course, that are also in detention? We heard from Cambodia saying they should be allowed to attend meetings. What is the path ahead for this forum?
Well, it's hard to know at this stage where Cambodia is going. Certainly ASEAN as a whole has already decided that the senior general, the coup leader, will not attend ASEAN meetings, and he's been excluded from a number of ASEAN summits over the last month or 6 weeks. And there is no sign of any change in that ASEAN position. So ASEAN has taken stronger action than it's ever taken before, but not strong enough. Much more needs to be done. I'd like to see ASEAN taking a lead within the United Nations itself and saying to the Security Council that the military should be cut off from its arms supply, cut off from its cash supply, and subjected to international accountability. Only these 3 steps are going to place sufficient pressure on the military to force it to negotiate with the opposition and hand over power to a proper elected civilian government. That's the only way out.
Chris, what of Aung San Suu Kyi's Australian advisor, Sean Turnipseed, given the sentences we're starting to see for Aung San Suu Kyi, what of his fate? Is there any chance that the Australian government may be able to bargain for his release?
I can't see that at this stage. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, of course, but I contrast the situation with that of Danny Fenster, a United States citizen who was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison and released within a couple of days. Certainly the completion of the kangaroo court process with him was an indicator that the military was ready to release him. But Sean is still being held. There have been some court proceedings, but the trial is nowhere near completion, nor is he close to sentencing. So I can't see any signs coming out of Myanmar that Sean is going to be released in the near future.
Chris, I really appreciate your analysis on this, and we appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Beverly. It's good talking to you again.